Welcome back to Cowboys Reality Check. If this is your first time here, you're landing on the right channel at the right time, because what we are about to break down is one of the most significant moves this franchise has made this entire offseason. Hit that subscribe button right now, because we cover this team deeper than anyone else. And today we are getting into the most important phone call the Dallas Cowboys have made this spring, a call that goes directly to the heart of everything that went wrong in 2025 and everything that has to change in 2026 if this franchise is actually serious about being competitive again. The Cowboys have made contact with the Miami Dolphins about a potential trade for linebacker Jordyn Brooks, and that one move, that one call, tells you more about where this organization's head is at than anything else that has happened this offseason. To understand why this matters so much, you have to go back and sit with how painful 2025 actually was on the defensive side of the ball for Dallas. Under defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus, the Cowboys surrendered 511 points and finished with the worst scoring defense in the entire NFL. The unit also allowed the third most yards in the league, giving up 6,409 total yards across the season. Think about what that means for a franchise that had spent years building its identity around defensive excellence. There was a time not long ago when the Cowboys were one of 5 teams in football that held opponents under 300 yards per game. They were 5th in scoring defense as recently as 2024. All of that evaporated in a single season. 3 of the worst defensive campaigns in Dallas Cowboys franchise history have all come since 2020, and last year was the worst of all of them. It was historically bad. It was embarrassing, and Brian Schottenheimer knew it. Through the first 8 games of 2025, the Cowboys were just the 4th team in NFL history to average 30 or more points per game on offense while allowing 30 or more points per game on defense. Dak Prescott was doing his part. The offense was alive and dangerous. But the defense was actively undoing everything the offense built, game after game, week after week. No team in NFL history has ever reached the playoffs allowing 30 or more points per game. So the math was always going to be brutal for this team. Schottenheimer himself refused to hide behind the offensive numbers. When reporters pointed to the offense as a bright spot, he was direct. He wasn't interested in moral victories. He wanted wins, and the defense was making wins impossible. Part of what made the defensive collapse so jarring was the linebacker situation, which was arguably the single most mismanaged position group on the roster all year. According to Pro Football Focus during the 2025 season, Kenneth Murray graded as the 78th linebacker in football out of 83 qualified candidates, and Shamar James graded as the 82nd linebacker out of 83 qualified candidates. Those aren't just bad grades. Those are bottom-of-the-barrel, worst unit in football grades. The Cowboys had invested in linebacker depth heading into 2025 by signing Jack Sanborn and drafting Shamar James. But Sanborn struggled to stay healthy all season, and James, as a 5th-round rookie, wasn't ready to carry a defense. The whole position group was a disaster, and it showed every single Sunday. The one bright light at linebacker was supposed to be DeMarvion Overshown, the former Texas Longhorn who had flashed genuine brilliance before injuries repeatedly derailed him. In 2024, before going down, Overshown tallied 12 pressures, 8 tackles for loss, 5 QB hits, 5 sacks for pass deflections, and 1 interception across just 13 games. The league took notice. ESPN polled executives, scouts, and coaches ahead of the 2025 season and ranked Overshown as the 8th best linebacker in football. An anonymous NFL defensive coach called him one of the most athletic linebackers he had ever seen, saying the guy is the fastest one out there, capable of completely taking over a game, and was really starting to get it. That kind of buzz around a young linebacker is rare, and the Cowboys had him on a cheap contract. But then the injury happened again. Overshown suffered a torn ACL, MCL, and PCL in his right knee in Week 14 against the Cincinnati Bengals during the 2024 season. He missed the beginning of 2025 while recovering. He returned to the field in Week 11 against the Las Vegas Raiders, and when he did come back, the difference was noticeable immediately. His playing time ramped up steadily from 50% to 60% to 70% against the Chiefs, and his sideline-to-sideline speed was immediately impressive as he continued getting his legs underneath him. But here is the problem that the Cowboys cannot escape as they head into 2026. Overshown has lots of ability, but hasn't shown enough availability early in his NFL career. He now has 2 torn ACLs and a combined ACL, MCL, and PCL tear on his ledger before his age 26 season. There are real questions about whether this could be his final season as a Cowboy if he cannot stay on the field, even as the organization also holds out hope that a fully healthy Overshown is a cornerstone of their defense. He is simultaneously one of their most important players and one of their biggest question marks. That tension is exactly why the Cowboys have been so aggressive in trying to bring in an established veteran linebacker alongside him, because betting everything on Overshown's durability after back-to-back catastrophic knee injuries is not a plan. It's a gamble. So when Cowboys insider Nick Harris from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram broke the news that Dallas had pivoted away from Pittsburgh Steelers linebacker Patrick Queen and was now discussing a potential trade for Miami Dolphins linebacker Jordyn Brooks, it made complete sense. Harris also reported that Azeez Al-Shaair, the Houston Texans, was being discussed as a Cowboys trade target. But it was Brooks who generated the most electricity, and it is Brooks who represents the most transformative potential upgrade at the position. Here is who Jordyn Brooks is and why the Cowboys would be willing to get aggressive to acquire him. This past season, Brooks led the league in total tackles with 183 and solo tackles with 99, while earning his first career All-Pro nod. He started all 17 games and added 3.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery, and 3 pass breakups. Those are the kind of numbers that don't just represent statistical volume. They represent a linebacker who is doing everything right. He is diagnosing plays quickly, getting off blocks, filling run lanes, and finishing. Pro Football Focus ranked him as the 10th best linebacker in the NFL last season and the 3rd best run defender in football. He is not a box score stuffer who pads tackle numbers on slow developing plays. He is genuinely excellent. Brooks, 28, is a Houston, Texas native who was originally the 27th overall pick in the 2020 NFL Draft by the Seattle Seahawks. He spent 4 seasons in Seattle and led the league in solo tackles in 2021, then suffered a torn ACL at the end of the 2022 season. He recovered, signed with Miami as an unrestricted free agent in 2024, and has been nothing short of elite in South Florida. Brooks has not missed a single game since signing with the Dolphins, and last season was the best of his career. He was not just an all-pro performer. He was a team captain. He was a leader. He was the kind of presence that changes the culture of a defense. Now, the Cowboys have confirmed they made the call. According to Miami Herald reporter Omar Kelly, the Dolphins have fielded calls from teams interested in trading for Brooks, and the Cowboys are confirmed as one of those teams. This is no longer just a rumor generated by a Cowboys beat reporter. This is confirmed reporting from someone covering the Dolphins side of the deal, which means both organizations are aware of the other's interest. That is a significant escalation. Earlier in the month, Dallas was described as merely discussing a potential trade for Brooks without anyone knowing whether they had actually reached out to Miami. Now we know they did, and that changes the entire conversation. The question everyone wants answered is what a deal would cost. Cowboys reporter Bobby Belt broke down a framework that came from a Dolphins-focused outlet and said it didn't sound too far off from reality. In one proposed scenario, the Cowboys would receive picks 11 and 30 plus Brooks, while the Dolphins would wind up with picks 12, 20, and 92. That would be a massive move for Dallas. It would mean giving up significant draft capital to move up in the first round while simultaneously acquiring a premier off-ball linebacker. It is aggressive, and that is exactly the point. This is not a franchise that can afford to be patient and hopeful anymore. Belt was direct about his own position on it. If the Cowboys can get Brooks and get something back in the process, he would pull the trigger, even if it means parting with a 3rd-round pick, because locking down the linebacker position for at least a year with an all-pro is worth that cost. Other projections have been slightly less expensive. Fansided's Austin Bundy suggested that acquiring Brooks could cost a team a day 2 pick, noting that with just 1 year left on his contract, Miami faces a choice between maximizing his value in a trade now or paying a significant price to keep him around during what looks increasingly like a rebuild in South Florida. That contract situation is where the timing element gets fascinating. Brooks currently carries a $10.9 million cap hit for 2026. If the Dolphins trade him before June 1st, that number drops to $8.3 million. If a trade occurs after June 1st, Brooks' cap number falls all the way to $2.5 million for the acquiring team. That gap is enormous, and it matters enormously for Miami's decision-making. It also matters for Dallas in terms of what they'd be absorbing. A post-June 1 trade would be dramatically more cap-friendly for the Cowboys, which is almost certainly why Stephen Jones has been measured in his public comments about timeline pressure. At the NFL owner meetings in Phoenix, Stephen Jones told ESPN's Todd Archer that Dallas doesn't necessarily need to have a veteran linebacker in place before the draft, explaining that player acquisition is 365 days a year and that there are always opportunities for trades. That is a carefully constructed statement. It doesn't suggest Dallas is cooling on the idea. It suggests they understand the calendar and have no incentive to force a deal at a pre-June 1 timeline, when waiting just a few weeks would dramatically change the financial math for everyone involved. Jerry Jones, meanwhile, has been characteristically blunt about where the team stands. Speaking to ESPN's Todd Archer, Jerry confirmed the Cowboys have been actively trying to make linebacker trades this offseason and have come up empty so far. He said the team wants to get better at the position, that they have been trying very much to make trades and those trades haven't worked out, but that none of that will deter them from getting better. Those are not the words of a man who is quietly satisfied with what he has. Those are the words of a man who is frustrated, who knows the problem is urgent, and who is not going to stop pushing until something gets done. The Cowboys famously missed on Patrick Queen, who at one point was being reported as nearly done to Dallas before the deal evaporated. Harris made clear the pivot from Queen was to Brooks and Alshire. Losing out on Queen stings, but in retrospect, Brooks may actually be the better fit. Brooks is the tackle machine, the run stopper, the high motor presence who never takes a play off. If the Cowboys can pair Brooks and Overshown in the middle of Christian Parker's defense, with Quinnen Williams and Osa Odigizua anchoring the defensive line, you suddenly have a unit that looks credible on paper. Add Darren Bland outside at cornerback, the recently signed Kobe Durant in the secondary mix, and Siobhan Revel Jr. continuing his development, and the picture of this defense starts to look like something a Brian Schottenheimer team could actually win with. Christian Parker is the other major piece of this puzzle. After Matt Eberfluss's disastrous one-year tenure was defined by miscommunication, missed assignments, and a unit that surrendered points at a historically alarming rate, Schottenheimer brought Parker in to rebuild the Cowboys' defense from the ground up. Parker came from the Philadelphia Eagles and Denver Broncos organizations and arrives in Dallas with a reputation for building physical, disciplined defenses. He has stressed that fixing the Cowboys' defense begins with controlling the line of scrimmage, prioritizing quarterback pressure, and stopping the run. Those are exactly the right priorities for a team that watched opponents gash them on the ground and through the air week after week in 2025. Parker is going to need veterans who understand how to play within a system. Rookies and young players are useful, but they are not reliable anchors. When you are asking a 25-year-old and Overshown to be the engine of a rebuilt defense while still managing the physical and psychological weight of recovering from multiple devastating knee injuries, you need a veteran presence next to him who has been through wars, who has led a defense, who has been a captain, who commands respect in the huddle. Jordyn Brooks is that guy in every possible way. He was a team captain for the Dolphins last season. He led the league in tackles. Defensive players rally around that kind of consistency and accountability, and that is exactly what the Cowboys' linebacker room has been missing. The Cowboys' 2026 draft needs are significant on the defensive side. There is near consensus that Dallas will spend both of their first-round picks on defensive players. DeMarvion Overshown is viewed as talented, but availability limited, and Shamar James is still developing as a starter. One draft target discussed as a potential fix at inside linebacker is Ohio State's Sonny Styles, who brings position versatility, strong hand technique, and man coverage ability that would fit a modern NFL defense. But the draft is a gamble. Even a first-round linebacker is not a day-one plug-and-play solution, especially in a system he is learning from scratch with a coordinator who is also learning his new roster. A trade for Brooks solves the problem with certainty. Brooks is a known commodity. He is 28 years old and coming off the best season of his career. He has not missed a game in 2 years. You know exactly what you are getting. The beauty of a potential Brooks trade, particularly if it can be timed to take advantage of the post-June 1 cap mechanics, is that it addresses the immediate need without completely stripping the Cowboys' draft capital. In most projections, Brooks would cost a day 2 pick or something in that neighborhood, and while some proposed frameworks have been more expensive, the reality is that neither Dallas nor Miami has an incentive to make this trade prohibitively expensive. The Cowboys need the player. The Dolphins need the draft capital. There's a deal in there somewhere if both sides want to find it. Now, the Miami side of this story matters too. The Dolphins already moved wide receiver Jalen Waddle to the Denver Broncos this offseason, and that move sent a clear signal to the rest of the NFL that Miami is open for business during what looks increasingly like a rebuild. New general manager John Eric Sullivan made it clear at the NFL Combine that his job is to answer the phone when it rings and that any player is tradable at a certain price. That is not a throwaway comment. That is a GM explicitly telling the league that his roster is available. Brooks is heading into the final year of the 3-year deal he signed as an unrestricted free agent in 2024, and rather than letting him walk in free agency next year with nothing to show for it, trading him this summer for draft capital makes financial and organizational sense for a team that is resetting its roster. The Dolphins likely won't be contenders in 2026, and the possibility of losing Brooks to free agency without compensation is a real and uncomfortable scenario Miami will want to avoid. Does Miami want to move Brooks emotionally? Probably not. He is exactly the kind of player you want as a foundational piece. He is a captain, a leader, one of the best linebackers in football. But business is business, and getting draft assets now, particularly if Dallas can offer a package that includes the kind of capital Miami needs to restock its roster for the future, is the smart play for a franchise that is clearly in the middle of a reset. No serious deal has yet piqued Miami's interest, according to Kelly's reporting, and Dallas is just one of several teams who have called. That competition matters. The Cowboys cannot assume they're the only suitor, and they cannot assume Miami will simply accept whatever Dallas puts on the table. If other teams are making calls, the price could escalate. That is why Jerry Jones's comment about being willing to keep pushing carries weight. The Cowboys know they missed on Queen. They cannot afford to miss on this too. What makes this entire situation so urgent for Dallas is the combination of factors all bearing down simultaneously. The defense was historically bad in 2025. The coaching staff has been completely rebuilt on that side of the ball. The draft is loaded with defensive prospects, but first-round picks still come with development timelines. The owner has publicly admitted the team has been trying to make linebacker trades and failing. And Overshown, the one inside linebacker already on the roster with genuine upside, is entering a make-or-break year after 2 of the most serious knee injuries a player could sustain. Every single one of those factors points in the same direction. Dallas needs a proven veteran inside linebacker, and they need him now. Jordyn Brooks would walk into AT&T Stadium with instant credibility. He would give the Cowboys exactly what they have been missing in the middle of their defense for years. A genuine, undeniable, tackle-every-play presence who commands the attention of opposing offensive coordinators before the snap even happens. He would mentor Overshown, anchor the run defense, and give Christian Parker a veteran foundation to build a scheme around. That is not a luxury. That is a necessity for a team that surrendered 511 points last season and cannot afford to go into 2026 with the same weaknesses at the second level of its defense. The Cowboys have made the call. Now, it is a matter of whether both sides can find the terms. Watch this space closely between now and the draft, and keep watching it into early summer. Because whether this deal happens before April or after June 1st, the Cowboys are telling the world that they believe Jordyn Brooks is the missing piece of their defensive rebuild. And here at Cowboys Reality Check, we will have every development covered the moment it breaks. Stay locked in.